Hey guys, I know I don't normally make this sort of video, something serious like this. Honestly, I was selfishly hoping that I could let this pass without commenting on it. I hope people, wouldn't notice or they'd forget and move on, but you all decided to keep me accountable, hold me to a higher standard. I've gotten dozens, maybe hundreds of comments by now, and as much as I didn't want to see them, I do have to thank you for them. Making me face this ultimately is what's best for me, best for the community, and for the people that I've wronged. So, I've delayed the actual point of this enough. In April of this year, 2025, I published a video that had blatant misinformation, that mischaracterized and misrepresented the statements of several upstanding individuals in the entertainment industry. I made the false claim that Hypersonic has been retconned as non-canon, when in fact he is canon, but is just currently blacklisted from being referenced in modern Sonic material. I'm very sorry. I also got a bunch of other stuff wrong. I don't know if you guys have been keeping track, but I published like 50 videos this year. 16 or 17 hours worth of content. We're talking about anime, video games, comics, cartoons, even real-world historical figures. And I messed some stuff up. So, I want to take this video to address all of the major mistakes I made in 2025. Issue some corrections, or maybe just places I've even changed my mind, and then also go over some instances where I was actually right, but a bunch of people thought I was wrong. So first, the really easy ones, almost all of which come from my Heroes vs. Villains series, where I choose crossover interactions from different universes, picking new bad guys to build a new rogues gallery for our favorite good guys to fight. In my first Marvel Heroes vs. DC Villains video, I said that Captain America would beat Deathstroke, which I thought was awesome because I love to see Canadians lose. And then later I said Deathstroke and Wolverine are good foils because they're both Canadian. This is just wrong. Deathstroke is American. I think I got it mixed up because I know Deadpool is an intentional ripoff of Deathstroke, who is Canadian, and also, the version of the character I've seen the most is actually the CW one from the Arrowverse. That Slade Wilson is Australian. So I think my brain just kind of short-circuited and I assumed all Deathstrokes are not American, but no, he is from the USA, that's my bad. In my second Marvel Heroes vs. DC Villains video, I had Daredevil fight a bunch of villains from Gotham City, and I said instead of partnering up with Foggy Nelson, he'd probably end up getting along really well with Commissioner Gordon. But I totally missed two obvious things. First of all, he's a lawyer. He would probably be friends with Harvey Dent, Two-Face. I have no idea how I didn't think of that. Also, I said that instead of the bat signal, Gotham would project his double Ds up into the sky. Now, full transparency, I mostly said this so I'd have an opportunity to say double Ds in the video, because I have the humor of a 5th grader. But as a lot of you pointed out, Matt Murdock is blind. He wouldn't be able to see a signal in the sky. I really whiffed this one. Then, in my Marvel Heroes vs. Gaming Villains video, I had a few screw-ups. When talking about Dr. Wily as a villain for Iron Man, I said that Mega Man and the Robot Masters were Reploids, but actually, that is a term that only applies to the machines from the Mega Man X games, which takes place in the far future, long after Wily has presumably died. In Wily's time, they're just called robots. Also, in the Doctor Strange section, I talked about the trippy visuals associated with the character that featured in his original comics, and I credited Jack Kirby for that art, when actually it was Steve Ditko who did that art and designed the psychedelic backgrounds. This is honestly just a limitation of my knowledge about the medium. I know that people tend to gloss over the work of Kirby and gas up Stan Lee when talking about this era of Marvel Comics, and this was my attempt to give a well-deserved shout-out, but I ended up spreading more misinformation and glossing over a different talented and influential artist. I legit apologize for this one. And then to round out this section, I just want to include some ideas from the comments that were so perfect I have no idea how I didn't think of them. Like, I got dozens of comments for each of these, they were that obvious. In the DC Heroes vs. Marvel Villains video, I put the Flash up against Graviton, when I should have went with Juggernaut. How does Barry's speed interact with a completely unstoppable force? Does the speed force trump the power of Cyttorak? If not, what if Barry's normal tricks like phasing and speed steal don't work on Juggernaut? It is such a fun pairing, and I totally missed it. Also, Wonder Woman versus Gore the God Butcher. Like, dude, I don't even think I need to explain why this is such a good pairing. And lastly, Green Lantern versus the Mandarin. It was right there. Superhero with magic-powered space ring versus supervillain with magic-powered space rings. I might be the dumbest man alive. Lastly, this one is from my DC Heroes vs. Anime Villains video. I had discounted Perfect Cell as a potential villain for any of the heroes because he's made from the DNA of a bunch of characters that don't exist in this hypothetical continuity. There's no Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, only Frieza is here as a Superman villain. But I got this sick comment explaining a scenario where Cell is made from the other characters in this universe. So DNA from DC characters like Martians, Kryptonians, and Atlanteans, and the DNA of the anime villains I included on the list. Frieza, Lord Boros are all for one. This is probably the coolest idea I've ever heard. I desperately want to make a whole video about it, but I don't know how to make it part of something larger instead of just a really short one-off thing. Anyway, another video I got a ton of comments on was the one where I explained that merging the Robert Pattinson Batman into the new DCU was a bad idea. Here's the thing, I don't think I was wrong at all, but I could have made my points a little clearer, so I'll explain those here. A lot of people didn't understand my point about the DCU needing its own Batman, saying, "You don't get it, we're going to see Pattinson's evolution. This is just early career Batman, he'll fit right in once this character arc is over." The reason I didn't address this argument in the video is because it seems really silly to me. Hypothetically, if we did watch this grounded detective version of Batman evolve into Ninja Justice League Batman, that would suck. It would be awful. It would be completely ruining the realism of the character in this version of Gotham. The DCU deserves a gothic Gotham, full of horror villains and circus freaks, undead monsters, frozen men with freeze guns, etc., while Reeves' verse is more suited for the human monsters, Penguin, Riddler, Black Mask, maybe you do Two-Face. But giving Pattinson a grapnel gun and putting him up against Man-Bat is never gonna work. There's no evolving into it that doesn't ruin what makes this version good to begin with. If you slowly make those changes, you're just slowly making it worse. And of course, there was another contingent who thought that Pattinson didn't need to evolve or change at all. They told me, Metropolis is supposed to be bright while Gotham is dark. The differences are what make it good. But I was never arguing against this point. Almost every version of Batman is dark, but dark comes in a lot of different shades. There's edgy, brutal type dark, like The Dark Knight Rises, hyper-realism dark, like the Nolan trilogy, noir dark, like Reeves' works, and fantastical dark, like Tim Burton, Batman the Animated Series, the Arkham games, and hopefully the DCU. They're different. We need a Batman and Gotham that is fundamentally a different flavor than the one with Pattinson, and trying to turn the existing world into that would ruin it. I also got quite a few comments on this video, Who Can Naruto Talk No Jutsu, where I asked the question, could Naruto convince various popular villains to stop being evil? One of these was Frieza, and I came to the conclusion that he could not convince Frieza. And I ended the section by saying that Naruto would just have to blitz him in his first form to take him out before he can transform. The comments did not like that. So this one's a little layered. First of all, this was not a video about power scaling. I get a lot of these comments on other videos. I'll make Kizaru from One Piece a villain for The Flash, and a bunch of the comments tell me I'm an idiot and that Kizaru gets washed in a nanosecond. But what everyone is forgetting is that this is a hypothetical fanfic world where I'm using amalgamations of these characters. Whoever I say is stronger or faster is. Because power scaling is not the focus of these types of videos. We're here to talk about character dynamics and arcs people can go on, not measuring who has the bigger number. Even though I do like to do that, it's just a separate type of content. These people really need to chill. Everyone spazzing out about this is the exact reason people tend to hate power scalers, and I say this as someone who likes the hobby. Now, that said, I will address whether Naruto could actually beat Frieza here, briefly, because it's a fun question, and believe it or not, I did think about it a little when writing that video. First of all, manga canon Namek Saga First Form Frieza is only confirmed planet level. People often scale him up to dwarf star level using clips from anime filler scenes with how quickly he destroys planet Vegeta, which even though it's 10 times the size of Earth is not classified as a large planet. But him destroying planet Vegeta is only referenced through dialogue in the manga, so you can't scale it up to dwarf star level with pixel measurements. Combine that with the fact that Final Form Frieza undershoots destroying the core of Namek because he was afraid he might get caught in the explosion. This is a Frieza that's supposed to be like 100 times stronger than his first form. Large planet to dwarf star level always made more sense to me for Final Form manga Frieza. And as for Naruto, once he absorbed 6 Paths Chakra, he was tussling with relativistic Ten Tails Madara in base. His casual, unfocused chakra split the entire moon in half during the events of the last movie. The data books describe 1/2 of Kurama's chakra as enough to turn the world to ash. The Otsutskis are described in those same data books as having the power to split planets apart, and Kaguya's final truth-seeking orb threatened to destroy an entire dimension, one that at the very least includes a star up in the sky. This is the same Kaguya Naruto overpowered several times during their fight. If you want to get really cheeky, you could wank Naruto up to solar system level, or 4th dimensional if you're completely insane. The point is, him blitzing a large planet level villain isn't as crazy as everyone made it out to be. Now, this is not definitive, and I used a bunch of subjective opinions when deciding my criteria for what evidence should be considered and what shouldn't. So, if you disagree, or even if the majority of people who watch the video disagree, that's okay, right? I don't mind conceding this particular point, but it did irk me. I just want to say, to everyone who acted like it was completely ridiculous to even insinuate 6 Paths Naruto could spawn camp First Form Frieza, I think this proves I wasn't just talking out of my ass. I got a little off track there. Now for a more definitive thing that I just straight up got wrong. I put out a video in May on Final Form Sukuna versus True Chainsaw Man. Spoilers for both Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen. Go ahead and skip to this timestamp if you haven't read the manga for those series. When calculating Sukuna's attack potency, I scaled his punch against Yuji right after incarnating into Megami and used that as his base AP. I didn't consider this was only 15-finger Sukuna, and after consuming the mummified corpse, he was an equivalent of full 20-finger power during the Shinjuku Showdown. That said, even if we scale him up to that point, assuming this punch was 75% of his total power, it's still less output than what I calced for his Divine Furnace, and that means he still loses to Pochita. So the outcome of the video isn't any different, but I did get this part wrong. I also called Sukuna's world-cutting slash, which is technically an evolution of his dismantle attack, Strong Cleave. This is a misnomer, as it's not actually his cleave ability, but it's a meme to call the world-cutting slash Strong Cleave. So I don't think this was technically wrong, but it's not a big deal. I get why people pointed out in the comments. And then lastly, this one isn't actually about power scaling, but it's related. I put out a short video this year why Vegito, the fusion between Goku and Vegeta, couldn't use both Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego at the same time. The reason being, they're forms that require you to be experiencing opposing mindsets. You can't simultaneously empty your mind of all will and also indulge your base desires for battle, because those are the prerequisites for both forms. And I got so many comments from angry Dragon Ball fans, notoriously the smartest group of people on the internet. They had two arguments. The first is that Goku's TUI could be used in tandem with Ultra Ego. In this form, Goku's body still acts on its own, but he allows his emotions to strengthen his body. What people don't get is that ego and emotion are not the same thing. When Vegeta uses Ultra Ego, he's not just feeling emotions, he's choosing his actions. That is what will is, and Goku can't do it if he's using Ultra Instinct, Omen, Mastered, or True. None of them. As an extension of this, a bunch of people pointed out that Beerus and the other gods of destruction use Hakai energy and Ultra Instinct at the same time, so clearly it must be possible, right? And yeah, if that's what the video was about, I would agree. But Ultra Ego is not just Hakai energy. It's a unique form that Vegeta developed for himself that requires his will to be in full control of his body. The form was invented by Vegeta. Beerus isn't in a state of Ultra Ego, he's just using Hakai energy. We even saw Goku use Hakai during the Goku Black arc in the manga. He didn't go Ultra Ego there, did he? It's because the form is not just as simple as using the energy, it's more than that. Secondly, I got a lot of people unironically telling me, don't apply logic to the series, it's about karate monkey aliens with superpowers. Whatever the author says goes, that's it. First of all, are you really arguing in favor of not using your brain? Second of all, the series has made these exact sort of limitations in the past. Kaioken can't be used with Super Saiyan because it disrupts your calm heart. Oh, but that's applying logic to the silly Chinese cartoon. This is not new. You're just butt mad that a fanfic video you watched won't ever happen in the real series. Sorry, I got a little heated on this one. Dragon Ball fans are just a lot. Finally, I have a handful of things I need to correct from my Lantern series. Starting with the Anime Lantern Corps back in January, this is a collection of videos where I pick individuals from different genres and franchises to fill out the different colors of the emotional spectrum from the Lantern Corps of DC Comics. In that original video, I messed up the Indigo Lanterns. The way they typically work is that they look for heartless, psychopathic people and overwhelm them with the power of compassion, turning them into a mind-washed lantern slave of the tribe that fights to help people. So I looked for anime characters that followed that same general character arc, starting out as brutal murderers that softened into protagonists and even heroes, like Gaara. But if they had already become a better person, they wouldn't need to be picked for the Indigo Rings. In my head, it made sense, but I get why people took issue with it. In all the subsequent videos, I just picked straight up irredeemable psychos for the Indigo Tribe, which I think is the best way to go. I also briefly touched on the Ultraviolet Corps, but mostly just to say that I think it sucks and the concept isn't well defined enough. But on that video, and every following one, I keep getting people telling me that I forgot to include the Gold Corps of Joy, or the Gray Corps of Depression. No, to be clear, I didn't forget anything. These are one-off instances from the comics that are not fully fleshed out cores. And while I do see the humor in the fact that the emotional spectrum doesn't include happy or sad anywhere in it, I'm just never gonna add these. They're not enough material to work with. Did you know there's only one Gold Lantern who's on like 2 pages of one comic set in the far future? Obviously, that's not worth including. But the last flaw from this first one, I put like 4 characters only from My Hero Academia and just generally overrepresented other big franchises like Dragon Ball and Naruto. This one was my first video in the series, and I hadn't really refined my rules yet. Since then, I've tried to only include a maximum of 2 characters from any single source. There are actually enough flaws in this original video that when I eventually finish all the Lantern videos I want to do, I will cap it off with one final video expanding the anime one and adding a bunch of these corrections. Anyway, moving on. In the Gaming Lanterns video, I put Tom Nook in the Orange Corps, and this made people mad. And you know what? Very fair. I've only played like 2 Animal Crossing games and not for very long, so my only exposure to Tom was as a greedy little rat never leaving me alone, but you are all correct. He's actually a very altruistic individual, even if he's very annoying. I take the L on this one. I also included Slender Man in the Yellow Corps for this video. That was probably the wrong move. He does show up in Slender the 8 Pages, but he originated as more of an internet folklore character. In a Something Awful forum, there was a photo editing contest, and later he appeared in a collection of creepypastas. I plan on doing an Internet Lantern Corps in the future, and that's the video where he should be getting a spot in the Sinestro Corps. So in that one, I'll probably include a 3rd pick from a video game, so the original list isn't incomplete in retrospect. In the Marvel Corps, I somehow completely forgot about Bullseye when choosing members of the Indigo Tribe. That was my bad. The guy is completely unhinged and definitely deserved the spot, maybe even more than Sabretooth, but he at least should have gotten an honorable mention. And finally, on the World History Corps video, I was informed by this YouTube comment that my choice of Miyamoto Musashi for the Red Corps of Anger was misguided. Full disclosure, I was just misinformed and didn't research this one enough. I think I saw a video a while ago that described his nature as a crazed double-bladed swordsman who taunted his enemies into failure, and I just ran with it. The quote I pulled was from his book, but as described here, it was misattributed. It seems like he was a very hot-headed individual in his youth, but tempered himself into someone with an immense amount of honor and wisdom through age. A lot like the bit with Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko earlier, this kind of mistake bothers me a lot more than getting the name of a fictional robot wrong or whatever, because this is a real person with a real legacy. I think once I complete the series and make a giant compilation video, I will include this note along with a different pick for the Red Corps. Stay frosty.